course, pick up from here and introduce our speaker, who would then take charge of the event. I would also like to use this opportunity to thank everyone who has been consistent right from day one. A very big thank you to everyone. It's not been easy. This is our 4th class. And of course, I really, really appreciate everyone. Please, Favor, are you on the call?
Yes, I am. Good evening.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that, Utebe. Good day, everyone. I hope you had a great day, and I hope you've been fine as well. It's nice to see you once again, and back on today's session on policy writing. And yes, today we'll be going to the advanced level, just as we had a preempt on Wednesday by Mr. Emmanuel Effiong. It will also be a teacher for today, and he is, as introduced on Wednesday, assistant professional and public policy, government relations, corporate governance, and of course, regulatory affairs. And he will be taking us again for today. I would not want to go so much into his profile because we all know, of course, he is a veteran in policy writing, and he is just as introduced as well on Wednesday. We are far in 12 minutes into today's call, and to allow for an elaborate time for us to have with the facilitator, so we'll be able to cover all questions, go through a particular sort of get to because I know you asked that for us, and so we're able to answer all questions as we may have for today's class. So without further ado, let's make welcome. If your eyes are not too busy, your virtual ends, let's make welcome Mr. Emmanuel Effiong to start today's class. Thank you. Mr. Emmanuel, please, you have the floor now.
All right. Thank you, Favor. Good evening, everyone. Pleasure to be with you guys again. Hope we had a good week. All right. So let's just go right into it. Let me know if and when you can see my screen.
Yes, you can see your screen.
Okay. All right. So today we're talking advanced policy writing. Sorry, just give me 1 second. All right, we're talking advanced policy writing. So on, Nigeria's happened to me. Let me just go off video. So on Wednesday, we discussed policy briefs. How many of us were here on Wednesday, and who can tell me something that stood out for them from the session on Wednesday? I'll be happy to take that. Anybody?
If you'd like to speak, kindly just raise up your hand, or you can use the chat box. And I would love for us to kindly engage today because today promises to be really amazing. Look forward to hearing from you all.
I'd just like to take one person, maybe just one person who was here on Wednesday, who can tell me. Gideon, I think I remember you. Let me point you out. Gideon, can you unmute and speak?
Hi, good evening, Mr. Emmanuel. And it's a pleasure to be in class today with you. So I think the first class we had learned about policy, And what stood out for me really was how to probe to get the answers that we want. That's using the 5 whys method. I think that's what stood out for me. One of the things that also stood out for me is so you had explained that policy briefs should be policy documents rather should be very brief, and it should be able to capture all the information that you want to the policy to speak to in such a way that at first glance, at least someone should be able to get the whole idea of what it's about. And it's also important that you use data to represent in the policy briefs. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Gideon, for that. So today we're moving a bit further to discuss from briefs. We're going to be discussing advanced policy writing. We're going to talk about memos. We're going to talk about position papers, and we're also going to talk about reports. Is my screen back up, please? Help me confirm if you can see my screen.
It's sharing, but we can't basically see anything. It's just blank.
It's just blank.
Yes. Anyone can also confirm from the end. Gideon, can you see his screen? Is it very clear? Can you see visuals? Oh yeah, it's on now. I can see.
All right. So like I mentioned earlier, today we're talking advanced policy writing. We're going to be discussing memos. We're going to be discussing position papers, and we're going to be discussing reports. All right. So firstly, why are we even discussing all of these things? A policy professional, policy advocate, policy analyst, these are 4 of the documents that you can use at different stages and based on the audience that you're engaging with. We already spoke about policy briefs. These are concise, evidence-based documents that are straight to the point and they have a call to action that is supposed to inform a non-expert audience to take action on a policy matter. Next, and part of the first thing we're going to be discussing today would be the memos, right? So memos are internal, urgent, and decision-driven documents, right? So while policy briefs are for external folks writing towards a policymaker to take action, a memo is an internal document that you're already part of a system, you're part of an institution, and you just want something to be brought to the fore. You want something to be brought to the agenda. Adepeju is not on the call today. She has spoke last on Wednesday how she had a matter that she tried to do a brief about in her organization. I did not scale through. For Adepeju being a member of an organization that is in government, what she was not referring to was a memo, not necessarily a brief, because she's already a member of the system. She just wants something to be emphasized. A position paper, it's a more detailed document than a brief and a memo. This is an external document. So you're writing as an outsider again, either towards policymakers or just the commentary in general, right? It's external. It has to be persuasive because just as the name entails, is a position paper. So you're taking a position on the matter, and then it has to be advocacy driven. So while a memo could be for information, policy brief could be for call to action, position papers are usually leveraged for advocacy. So you're doing it because there's a policy matter, there's an action, and you're pushing advocacy for a particular thing to be done. And for those of us who have done some study on policy advocacy, advocacy is something that either leads to a policy change, a behavioral change, or a law. Then you have your reports, right? So reports are like the more extensive ones. So these ones are comprehensive, they are data heavy, and they are audit driven, right? So for example, on Wednesday, I made allusions to the Oroshane report, which was a report that was made by presidential committee that was looking at the recalibration of federal MDAs, right? So a report is comprehensive. While policy briefs, like I told us, 2 to 3 pages, 4 pages max. Memo can just be a page. Position paper could be between 2 to 10 pages. Reports should be as detailed as possible. All the facts, all the data, all the pros, all the cons, they are comprehensive, and they are documents that give the other side a place to oppose, right? You do your audits, you have to be as detailed, as granular as possible when doing reports, right? So the goal for us, whether as an organization, as YALI, or as individuals, is to choose the right tool for the right target. So know who you're writing to, know the audience, know the influencers, knows the power that they have. It could be a particular matter and you're writing a brief to somebody, but to another audience on the same matter, what they'll need is a report to make it more detailed, or what they'll just need is a position paper. Say, as YALI Network, this is our stance on this, and this is what we think needs to be done. Again, I can't see your hand. So if anybody has a question, just put your hands up, and Favor will call my attention to it. So firstly, let's talk internal memos, right? They're for internal decision making, and they're for what I call managing up, right? So you're a mid, semi-senior, senior level, low level person in an organization, in a firm, and you feel like a matter should be brought up. You feel like government should consider this. You feel like your director, your permanent secretary, your minister, your line manager should consider something. You can put a memo for it. A government parastatal can do a memo to another government parastatal. And important thing is to get them to consider a matter, right? So the typical structure for a memo around policy matters is one, you have to clearly define what the issue is, right? So what are you writing your memo about? Is it a memo on how we can generate or how we spend internally generated revenue in the organization? Is it a memo on a particular quota should be kept for recruitment for young people in this parastatal, right? So what is the issue? You have to clearly state it. Then give us context. For the policy brief, we call it context, right? The memo give us some background. What is the current status quo? What exists? And what led to this issue, if anything, right? So let us know that, let us understand it clearly. Again, unlike the policy brief where you're addressing someone who might not be, or who most likely is not an expert in the field, for a memo, you're talking to somebody who does the work. It's an internal document. So writing a memo, the stakeholder understands it. So there's no lot of place for like an executive summary. You're not helping them understand it. They already understand it. You're just highlighting the issue and giving them background context, right? And then obviously, on Wednesday, I spoke about policy options. With memos, also good to have your pros and the cons, right? What should be done, what should not be done, how would it benefit, what would be the loss, what would be the trade-off, so to speak, of this policy action. There's no policy action that is 100% insulated from having some downsides, right? So what are the pros and what are the cons? And then next is recommendation, right? So this is the issue, this is the background, these are the options, and then this is what I recommend. One critical element in your memos must be your risk assessment. Before you go to write a memo on a matter, look at the risk of what would happen, what could happen if this action is implemented, right? Always tell your leader, your management, your influencer, what could go wrong if they follow your advice, right? Be accountable enough to do some homework and give them the full picture. You don't want management or somebody higher up implementing a policy, putting out a circular without properly assessing or making for possible risk that could come up in the process. So ensure that you do that back-end analysis and highlight it in your memo. So let's do a quick exercise, and I'd like us to engage as much as we can. So we have a prompt here. Say I'm doing a memo to the FCC, right? And I'm telling him in my memo, the issue and my recommendation is that we should digitalize all the land records in the FCT, right? So all the C of O, R of O, nothing paper-based, everything should be digitalized. Everybody that owns a land in Abuja, we should be in the FCT, we should be able to have it on a particular portal. Right. So as somebody who is supporting me in coming up with this memo, can I have people just identify 3 risks that could come up in the implementation of this? 1, a political risk, a financial risk, and a technical risk. Again, like I told you guys on Wednesday, I always want these things to be interactive. So please, I would like to see some show of hands and any takers on this. What are 3 risks that could come up in me implementing or me advising the minister to implement this memo?
Okay, we have Utibe. Utibe, please you can share your thoughts.
Okay. So one of the risks, I don't know where it falls to. It's the fact that there will be no more sales of papers, for instance, like no more sales of papers and no more paperwork. I'm saying it as a risk because I hear a lot of civil servants actually complain of anything that wants to take away paper. That's why I'm seeing it as a risk. That's for them.
Okay, so there might be some resistance to go transitioning away from use of papers on the place of the stakeholders. Okay. Gideon, please go ahead.
All right, sir. So I think one risk that I would identify in this is the risks of low political will to digitalize the system just to enhance whatever is already happening. Thank you.
All right, thanks. I think that's tied to what Tube said, right? So because people enjoy the status quo, there might not be enough political will and buy-in to go digital. Any other person? I think I want a lady to speak. 2 gentlemen have spoken. Anybody? Any takers?
Okay, Samson, you have the floor. Okay, Samson's a gentleman. Can you speak?
Yeah, he can. But after something, Favor, you would speak to. I want to hear from you. I know you're moderating, but I also want to hear your thoughts. Yes, Samson, please go ahead.
Very well.
Okay, I think one risk that will come with transitioning to digital when it comes to such documents will be the cost first, and then the ability to compile data from already existing paperworks. So the cost and the time in between the transition moment.
All right, thank you, Samson. Yeah, that's a financial risk. Very, very valid. Very valid. Yes, Favor, let's hear from you.
Okay, also cybersecurity risk, because we all know how these civil servants are. They're mostly not digitally literate. Number one is the fact that the security risk on the cyber level, they might not fully understand the risk in there. And, also the corruption aspect of it, we have someone that might want to just tamper with something here and they just to clear evidence of whatever might go wrong in the procurement of land. So one is the cybersecurity, and the other one is digital literacy on the end of the civil servants. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I see in the chat box, Gideon said another risk is the lack of technical know-how. Yes, that's aligned with what you just said. Yeah, so we've covered it, right? It's financial risk on the cost imperative, the technical risk on, first of all, people understanding the system and then understanding how to manage it from cyber threats. And then there's political risk of the buy-in from the stakeholders who are thriving on a paper-based structure, right? So you can see that if I'm writing this memo now to the minister, I have to factor in this and have to make my arguments or make my cases putting all this risk in mind so that the memo doesn't just die a natural death on arrival. Right. So before we go to position papers, let me show us examples of 2 memos that were in the national discourse recently. Right. So I don't know how many of us are aware of the Executive Order 9 that the president signed, which basically was going to change the way earnings from the oil sector from the NNPC is going to be remitted to the Federation account. So this is a memo from the Minister of Finance, Office of the Minister of State for Finance, written to all the stakeholders involved, NNPC, NUPRC, MNDPRA, Accountant General, and the rest, telling them exactly how the President's executive order is going to be implemented, right? You can see she did a section of deduction, so all the various deductions that was accrued to the NNPC, to MDGIF, and all those things are going to be seen. And this memo was basically implementing the executive order to say that they will be seized immediately. There will be a sub-federation account, so where all the monies that used to go to NNPC directly is now going to go to the federation account. There will be an audit in retrospect of all the deductions that NNPC have done before, and then there will be restitution of any revenues from both their management fee, the exploration fund, the infrastructure fund, and then there will now be need for there to be weekly reports, right, from the NNPC just to standardize the process. So this was sent by the Ministry of Finance to the NNPC, example of a memo, right? And then that was on the 19th, and then on the 26th, the NNPC also sent a memo back to the Office of the Honorable Minister of Finance, right? So this is where we talk about assessing risk. So if you can see closely here, the NNPC is telling the Honorable Minister that they've done an assessment of what the implementation will look like. You can see that they have a background there, right? So the background that they are just talking about what the implementation of the status will look like, what the president says should happen, and what the change will look like, right? And then they're now bringing forth the argument, the pros and the cons, like I mentioned, considerations, right? They talk about the financial and commercial challenges. So there's something that Nigeria does, which is called forward crude contracts, where you get money from, say, a lender, international lender, and then you commit to pay them back in your future crude. So you can say, give me 10 billion, and then maybe say 10 billion is equivalent to, let's say, 10,000 barrels of crude. You can now tell them over the next 4 years, 5 years, I'll be paying you from my future crude earnings. So sometimes I even pay you in actual crude itself. So NNPC is saying that some of these debt obligations that they have, if all the money is now going to federation account first, there might be some issues in servicing these debt deals, right? They're talking about royalty tax. So this is like when you do when a company signs an agreement with NNPC to explore an oil well, there's some royalties that go with it. They how their taxes are calculated. It's always a profit sharing contract, the PSC, right? I don't want to get the technical on the oil and gas things, but basically NNPC is highlighting to the Minister of Finance what would happen and what should be considered in implementing this executive order. They are not saying they don't want to obey it, it comes from the president, but they're just making NNPC see the pros and the cons of it, right? They have some facts and figures. I talked about data earlier, right? Facts and figures to justify that. They have some presentations in there. They have their numbers, what it looks like. And then they're saying that if you're going to implement this, this is what needs to happen, right? This is what we need to consider. And they list it all there. And then they're now for the Honorable Minister to make a more informed decision. They have their recommendations in there as well. So this is an example. We might not be in that situation now, but I'm sure that some of us here that might get employed in government parastatals, some of us might already be employed in government parastatals. If you ever find yourself in a position where you want to do a memo for a matter that is dear to your heart, a matter that will lead to a policy change, this is the approach you use. And these are two very recent, you can see the date, these are two very recent memos, conversation that is even still actually happening even right now, especially now that we have a new Minister of State for Finance coming in. So it's an example, real life example of how memos work practically. So as YALI Network, as individuals, if you want to go for that approach, that is exactly how you structure your memos. Right. So moving on next to the position papers, right? Remember on Wednesday, I talked about speaking to the head, connecting to the heart. I hope you remember that, right? So you use facts, but you find an emotional lever to connect to your stakeholders, but use your facts and your figures to speak with their head, right? So the idea of position paper is to change, either you want to change the public narrative or you want to influence a stakeholder group. Say, for example, you're someone who is of the opinion that fuel subsidy should come back, right? Let's say that is your position. And obviously, you know that the government, the IMF, the World Bank, everybody is applauding the federal government for removing fuel subsidy, despite the blowback impact it's having on the average citizen, right? So let's say your position as an organization, as an individual, is to write to influence the Ministry of Finance to bring back subsidies, right? You can on paper for that, because there you're not doing a memo, right? A policy brief might not help you to completely distill all the points considering the enormity of the matter, and so you now have a position paper, right? So it has to be firm, but it has to be logical, right? So the appeal to the hard part has to come in, but it has to make sense, because you're adopting a position. With policy briefs, with memos, you can have recommendations, you can have options. With a position paper, you've identified a position, right? So the problem is, this is the structure. Source subsidy was removed. Hardship is happening. 60% of 62% of Nigerian population are now living under the poverty line. 161 million Nigerians are living in multidimensional poverty, and all of this as a direct, you have to link it. And again, this is an example I'm making, right? I mean, the numbers are true, but it's not only because of fuel subsidy. I'm just making an analogy with that. And then it assumes some of the main reason why the poverty numbers are what they are. You make that linkage and say this is why it's wrong, right? So fuel subsidy should not be removed. Instead, we should have had a better way to refine it, right? So we are saying that the problem was corruption in fuel subsidy. So fuel subsidy itself is not bad, but it's how the players and how it was structured that is bad. So now, how do we fix it? Okay, in Norway, they have a fuel subsidy. In South Korea, they have a fuel subsidy. In America, they have a fuel subsidy. This is how it's been structured. Nigeria can structure theirs this way, this way, this way, and this is how you fix it, right? So you're taking a position and you're showing how to fix. Remember, I said with policy briefs, you can suggest, you can guide, but with the position paper, you have decided, you've done your analysis, you've done your findings, that this is the way to go, and you're sticking by it, right? The difference, like I said on the slide there, is you take a side aggressively. So you've decided that this is our position, this is what we feel, this is what we believe, this is how it should be done, and we're presenting you with the facts, the figures, the numbers, the narrative to show you this is why you should take this side of action, right? So with the position paper, you have to be sure that you've done your due diligence. You have to be sure that you've done enough there, because don't forget, you're trying to change a narrative. Something already exists, or maybe people are not looking at it that way, and you want to make people look at it that way. So it has to be compelling, it has to be factual, it has to be well written. You have to be sure, right? You can't have suggestive lingua in your position paper. You have to be firm but logical in your position paper, so that someone reading it can tell, okay, this is what these people think, this is what they think about it, and this is how they feel this should be done. Yes, Favor, I can see your hands up. Please go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so I have a question real quick. It's just to kind of compare this to journalism. I'm a journalist, right? So I want to just ask, can one compare policy paper and policy brief to an analysis and position paper to an op-ed? Are they related? Because from the examples you've given and from the features you highlighted, they are kind of similar. Op-ed is taking it aggressively. You're saying do this, and you're giving your evidence, and your data is all there for them to see. But you recommend that this is what you should do. In op-ed analysis, you're just pointing exactly how it is, giving the two sides of the issue, the pros and cons, and everything. Are they related, or there are differences in the two kind of papers?
I mean, what you're mentioning are various mediums, or media rather, where you could publish your policy briefs or your position paper. You could have a position paper and publish it as an op-ed in a newspaper, right? Some op-eds are position papers. Some op-eds are people telling government what they feel and what they feel should be done, right? So it's not you could have you can't publish a memo, but you could have a policy brief and go to newspaper and say this is what we feel, want to publish this as an op-ed, right? So I think op-ed is an opinion in itself, right? So you can have an opinion on the matter. The difference between some op-eds and a position paper is that some op-eds are just this is maybe the author's opinion about something, right? And he opines it, and then he gives you what he feels. But the position paper, you don't put that light disclaimer. You're sticking by it. You're willing to defend it. You're like, it's not subjective. I am favored Adeboye, and I believe that subsidy should be removed, and this is why, right? And then you write it in that context, and you can decide to publish it in a newspaper, like I said, or send it directly to a stakeholder. Yeah, so a position paper could be published as an op-ed, but not all op-eds are position papers. What will make an op-ed to meet the criteria of a position paper is if it takes this criteria, like I have, it's based on fact, it takes a stand, and it identifies a particular area, and it posits that is how that problem is supposed to be fixed. Does that answer your question, Phil?
Yeah, it does very well. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So let's do another bit of a discussion, right? So one of the best ways to be sure that your position paper is going to pass the test because the position paper, you're giving it up to interrogation, right? Because you're choosing a side and you're sticking by it. So there's something we call the steel manning exercise, where you preempt counter arguments and make for them or accommodate them in your position paper, right? So the saying is, to win an argument, you must understand your opponent's view better than they do. So if you're saying that subsidy removal was bad, you just assume if somebody's reading this, what would be their argument against it? And then you account for that argument in your position paper, so that by the time somebody's reading it and they're trying to come up with that argument, it's already a moot point because you've addressed it. I hope that's clear. So let's just do a quick exercise, right? Anybody, I'll just play angels advocates. I don't want to say devil. So anybody who has any matter or any policy issue that is dear to their heart, that they have a position about, can you just come off mute and tell me what that is? And I'll try and make a counter argument for it and see how you respond.
Okay, we have Chief Jennifer. Can you? Okay, hand is down. Do you have a question? Can you please just say if you do any of it or if you don't?
All right. He said that if you have a strong policy, you should speak about it, or a policy idea. So I have one. I don't know if I can proceed or.
Yes, please go ahead.
All right. So my policy that I'm very passionate about is to abolish or refurbish the orphanage system in Nigeria, because I do believe that orphanage systems are not. They have become like prisons for most children, but I strongly believe they are supposed to be transitional, where children come in, spend a little time, they are allocated or attached to families, and they leave. But a situation where a child gets into the orphanage at 6 months and at 15 years old, that child is still there, then it becomes a prison. And most orphanages are overcrowded. You have teenagers that are living together in a 2-bedroom apartment. How do you manage those natural chemistry and hormones that begin to rise in children? So my own idea is for us to develop a policy that we abolish orphanage systems, orphanage homes that do not meet a certain criteria, and then refurbish the whole system in a way that children just pass through orphanage, maybe 6 months, highest 1 year. That will be my policy idea.
Okay, stay off mute because we're about to have an argument, right? Okay, so I've heard the problem, I've heard the solution, I've not heard the stakeholder involved. Who is going to be the one to, who are you advocating your policy to? Is there a government agency that?
Yes, I will be working with the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs, Humanitarian, and of course NAPTIN, because they've been receiving a lot of these cases of rape and, and then of course my organization and other civil society organizations will be the stakeholders.
Those are the people that are working with you, but you're advocating a policy to somebody. So which government agency is
to
in
the
charge?
Federal Ministry of Women Affairs.
Okay.
They will push it, yes.
Are the Federal Minister of Women Affairs, are they the ones in charge of regulating orphanages?
No, but if they believe, first of all, I'll have to sell the idea to them. When they accept, okay, let's even take it straight to the House of Reps.
Hold on. Who regulates orphanages in Nigeria? Is there a regulatory agency for orphanages in Nigeria? Or are they run as private businesses? Are they
No. They are regulated by Women Affairs and then humanitarian, Ministry of Humanitarian, Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs.
So if I want to start an orphanage now,
You have to get a CAC registration, yes, and then you get approval from Women Affairs and Humanitarian.
Fantastic. Okay. So Ministry of Women Affairs and Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs are the ones that coordinate orphanages.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Presently in Nigeria, in the regulation or in the laws for running an orphanage, is there any limit to how old a child has to be in an orphanage?
No, and this is why this is important, because you cannot just send out approvals and then there is no guiding principles, there is no rules, there's no terms and conditions attached. Orphanages are just orphanages for orphans. They don't have an age limit, a time stay limit, nothing like that is in the law. So we want to make those laws available so that they will be guided by these laws based on these problems.
So when they get to 15 years, where do they go to?
They don't have to get to 15 years. When they get to 15, they are still in the orphanage. There are some that are 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Jennifer, I'm asking your policy protection. You're saying there should be an age limit. So when they get to that age, what happens to them?
They in fact, before they even get to that age, first of all, what I am even fighting for is this orphanage home should be a transitional space, a transition from your situation of orphanhood into a family that will accept you.
Okay.
Yes, because this is what orphanage systems are supposed to actually be, where these children are kept and then they're attached to homes. Like in other countries, you have the systems like child protecting agencies which are run by the government. But in Nigeria, these orphanage systems supposedly are supposed to act like the child protecting services, but then they now make it permanent. They are not even looking for people to come and adopt. And then,
So Jennifer,
yes.
you've just highlighted the two gaps, right? So first of all, there are no there's no child protective service agency in Nigeria.
In Nigeria, yes. It's the orphanage systems that are acting as that.
Exactly. So there's no child protective services in Nigeria.
Yes.
And there's no there's no institutionalized foster care system in Nigeria.
No.
Okay. So because these two things don't exist, can you now see why these children have to be in these orphanages as long as they can? Because there's really no place for them to transition to.
There actually are places, but most of these orphanage homes have made this a business. So they make it impossible for these children to be even adopted, even if you try. Because the more number they have, the more pitiful they look when civil society organizations or religious bodies come to visit. In this orphanage, we have 68 children. We are feeding 68 mouths. So the story is more enticing for you to relate with and give them more.
Exactly.
So it moves from the care.
What we are saying is there is no institutionalized system for where these orphanages will offtake people to. There's no foster care system enshrined. There's no child protective services. Today I was seeing in the news on Arise that a young baby was abandoned in a dumpster, and it took people to come and take them off their hands. In a sane world or in a place that had the structure, child protective services will be called.
They will know where to put the baby, yes.
There's no child protective services. There is no foster care structure. So if you go to an orphanage now and say, okay, you guys are keeping these people to look pitiful, when they're up to 11 or once they are like 8 or 9, let's take them somewhere. There's no place to take them to.
There is no place.
Your policy, that's what I'm saying. So your policy, first of all, is not with the orphanages. Your policy recommendation should be with the government. to establish
create child protection services.
Child protection services, and then enshrine a foster care system where prospective foster parents will go to government and register to be foster care parents. They'll go and do the assessment, do the checks and balance. How many children can you take? What age can you take? And then they will now be doing the off-taking. If these two structures don't exist, then you cannot blame the orphanages are even helping us by keeping them. Because if they don't keep them, there's no institutionalized place on where they should go to.
Yes, but like I have had first-hand situations many times, way too many times, where parents that are able and let me say not like wealthy but at least able to take care of these children have tried to adopt these kids, and the orphanages do not want to let these children go. All for what? And they are not able to take care of these children. So every orphanage home must have a limited number of children that they can take. And the truth is, it's not about how many and you want to help. Now in that situation where you want to help but your help is now having so much repercussions, because most of these children, they grow up traumatized by the experiences they have shared or gotten from these orphanages.
The question I'll put to you is, I cannot take somebody's word for it that they are able and qualified to be foster parents if there's no government policy
measuring
that states the template of what
criteria.
qualified parent. They could take that child tomorrow, turn into an armed robber. They could take that child tomorrow and turn into a ritualist. You cannot just take their word for it, like, oh, this people look good on paper. There has to be a checklist because, like you said, child protection services go to foster homes regularly to check on the kids and see if they're actually being taken care of properly.
Yeah.
So we don't have these agencies of government backing this thing. I personally don't feel like you should just give people up because someone says they want a child or they're able to take care of a child. There should be a baseline for what qualifies you to be a foster parent. So the advocacy now should be for the National Assembly to establish an agency for child protection services, which will also be in charge of setting the template and the baseline for the foster care system in Nigeria. Then we can now say the orphanages now
we are refurbishing the orphanage system or shutting them down. Yeah.
Exactly. Does that make sense?
Very much, sir. Thank you for the guidance.
So if you were doing a position paper on this now, you have to make account for all these arguments that I brought up and factor the position paper so that when it goes there, they'll be like, okay, this girl has put some thought into it. Because there is a problem, right? But we're trying to solve for the cause and not just the symptoms. And now you now have to go back to our risk assessment. Setting up a government agency, that's cost on government, right?
Yeah.
There has to be a board, there has to be staff, there has to be an office. For something like this, it has to be across the 6 states of Nigeria and the FCT. There has to be a budget, right? Supporting cost of governance. Do they want to take that extra load? If they're taking that extra load, or do they want to make them a department within the Ministry of Women Affairs so that they don't set up a whole new commission? So these are the things you consider before you push your position paper forward. So the taker knows that you've accounted for. Because if they say, oh, this is a very good idea, but government does not have money now, your issue has died on that place.
On that table,
yeah. Don't set up a new commission. Make a department in the Ministry of Women Affairs in charge of this. That is a bit more easier to push.
Straightforward.
Create a whole new agency, right? So just factor all these things when you're pushing out your paper.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Can I mute now?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm seeing more hands up. All right, let's go. Favor, I think you're next.
Yes, actually, I have a policy that I would love the government to actually implement. But before then, I wanted to even chip in with Jennifer's question when she said things about orphanages in Nigeria. I think the Ministry of Women Affairs have the Child Development Department under them. I think they're responsible for protecting children. And also, NAPTIP also has the responsibility of taking care of children in Nigeria, not only to address abuses, but also to protect them, basically. And also, the police force too is there. These are departments and people that are already doing this work. I think all we need to do just to find a way to apply the existing regulations in Nigeria, and also to, just like you proposed, to find a way to bring in more factors or more systems to make these policies work and this department work better. And my own policy is just it's a bit controversial though. It's about the thing that governors in states in Nigeria have, they own all the lands in their jurisprudence. So here is why I would want that particular law to be either abolished, or there should be a limit to what they can do, because we've all seen how governors use this power or go under the umbrella of this law to silence opposition, silence dissent, or even punish their enemies in a way. Now, I don't want to mention governors in Nigeria, but I've seen different cases where the governor with this law will say, oh yeah, rather the governor will, let's say, seize the land unethically, or do something, just maybe what was it called, demolish a building, just do something really really crazy, and then they'll come out. So when they take it to court, that they take it to court, the governor owns the land. So whatever, even if you are allowed to own the land for 10 years, I want to take my land back, you have to release the land as a person. Now, I think that law is somehow archaic and should even be taken out completely. If not, there should be a limit to what they can do. And there should be a limit to who they can apply that law to, because you can't say because today I talk against the government, then tomorrow you're seizing my land already. It doesn't make any sense. So I think that law should be abolished, basically. Not a policy, it's a law in this context.
Okay. So the Land Use Act is your issue, right? And it's not a government thing, right? It's a national law that all land belongs to government. And if government is taking your land for anything, they're supposed to give you some compensation. But my counter argument for you for this position paper of yours is, first of all, where do you stay, Favor? Which city do you live in?
I'm in Abuja.
Okay. What area in Abuja do you stay?
Airport Road.
Ah, fantastic. Is there any overhead bridge close to your house? Or do you access any overhead?
I see some, yeah, I think I know Shoprite Bridge and Ochika Bridge. Yeah, these pedestrian bridges. Yeah.
Okay.
Not, yeah,
Are there electrical poles or traffic lights around your area?
There are lots of them.
Okay. Now think about when government was doing all these infrastructural projects that you enjoy so much, and it helps make your life easier. You can see, you can move, you can drive. They had to buy the lands that they use for all these projects from people. How much pressure do you think that will put on public finances?
I think, okay, it may maybe a lot of pressure, but that's not the angle I'm picking it from actually.
I cannot come from your angle now. I'm countering your angle. I'm not aligning with your angle.
Okay, you don't have to, but the context of you trying to use the land is different.
No, the point I'm making is the fact that government have access to land is why they can put up infrastructure projects that we enjoy. So we can't pick and choose, right? If we are going to abolish all the land, it means whenever government wants to do a road, a bridge, traffic lights, any infrastructure project at all, they have to pay people who are the owners of that land. It doesn't belong to government. And that will now add cost to those projects and probably going to really slow down the pace of infrastructural development in the metropolis. So by abolishing this law, that is what you're opening us up to. Are you willing to go with that?
Okay, it depends, because now, okay, let me just go through this. I don't want to mention anybody's name before, but I think I have to at this point.
You don't have to mention names. You don't have to mention names. You don't have to mention names. Government is government. We're talking about the law, not the person. We're talking about the law. The person that you're mentioning did because the law allows him to do it. So we're talking about the law. So my argument to you is, if you're going to put this forward and we're aligning with it, how do you now accommodate for the fact that this other thing will come up? Because government now don't have access to all land to be able to install. For example, the Ministry of Digital Economy has a project to lay down 9,000 kilometers of cable, right? Which is going to help bring internet to all parts of Nigeria. And all governors came together and gave the military right of way because they can, right? Same thing with the coastal road. Everybody can have the arguments about that. But now imagine if the 90,000 kilometers of cable, all those kilometers belong to individuals and not to government. And people had to, Minister Bosun Tijani had to get permission from every landlord, everyone 1 kilometer. That project obviously will not take off. So I'm not saying your law should not be abolished, but I'm saying if your law is abolished, this is the door it opens. So how are you accommodating that in your position paper?
Just can you recap that once again? I didn't get the last part you said. The
So I
door
said
are open. What would
for the law to be abolished, you're pushing for the law to be abolished. For the law to be
okay?
abolished, now opens the government up to this issue I mentioned, which having to pay for land to do infrastructural projects, right? So how would you accommodate that? Because don't forget, the exercise you are doing is for you to accommodate counter arguments in your paper. Because if your paper comes to a policymaker, this is what they will, first of all, probably one of the first things that will come to their mind. If you abolish this is what will happen. So you should have made accommodation for that in your paper. So how would you accommodate for that?
Okay, then in that case, if you're saying if you don't, if you abolish this law, it means you spend more money on purchasing lands here and there, and you'll not even be at the area you want it to be. Then there has to be a limit to the use where they can use this law, because you can't say today someone countered your policy or whatever, and then tomorrow you just have an idea suddenly that you want to do something in that particular area the person is living, and then you can't abolish the person's house. That's number one. Number two, a particular experiences I got like that. Someone mentioned last year, read it to me that he's out of his house unjustly and he just paid his rent. I asked why. He said it was abolished. That's the University of Abuja and the area council in Agagolada that it abolished. They demolished the house rather, and he said they didn't pay them anything, no refund or whatever. Now that is somehow now what I learned later was that they basically had issue with the area council, whatever, and then next thing they want to seize their lands. It was kind of dicey. It wasn't really even that clear. I couldn't connect the dots. But I was like, why is that when you have issue with somebody and you are all in power, you want to attack the person by seizing their lands without commission, and it will affect citizens unjustly. So I'm not saying they shouldn't go ahead and find a way to do better facilities in Nigeria, but there should be a limit to how they can use this power when they're in government. That's just my take on it.
Okay, so it means the question you're asking is not a land question, it's an abuse of power question. Because
Exactly. But
speaking of power of land, people get arrested due to abuse of power, people get intimidated due to abuse of power. It's not limited to land. There are people that are jailed now because someone is abusing power and arresting them. There are people that lose their jobs because someone is abusing power. So it's not a conversation that is restricted to land, right? For
yeah,
land,
but in
for land compensation is enshrined that if you legally own a land and for government purposes they decide to use that land, some compensation should be paid, and the constitution stipulates the value of the compensation vis-a-vis the value of the land that should be paid to you. What happens, I'm not defending anybody, but what happens is most people get land and develop this land outside urban development plan of a particular metropolis. There are people who build houses on places that should be lagoons, that should be drainages, that should be reserved for recreational areas. And the fact that someone turned a blind eye to it doesn't mean it's right. When we now have a governor or a minister or whoever who now says, this place was not for residential, I want to use it for what it was originally meant for, then they have the right to send you out without compensation because that place was technically built illegally. Right. So the onus is on us. If you're renting a place, if you're going to go into a place, find out. That's why they say when you buy a land, take the CFO to the FCDA if you're in Abuja or whoever is development agent and find out if actually that place, the FCDA is aware that that place is residential. Because if anything happens, government is not liable because you're actually building off plan or you're living in a place that was off plan and you won't be compensated for that. If you're taken out of a place that you own legally, government should compensate you. If they don't, you can go to court. So that is the land part of it. If it is abuse of power part of it, then it means we take over powers from government to arrest people, to coordinate the police. Because again, someone wants to abuse power, they'll leverage their office to abuse power anywhere they can. And abuse of power, I'm not making excuse for it, but it's not limited to land, right? I don't know if this helps at all, Favor.
it does in a way, but my own focus right now is land. People abuse power in different ways, but in journalism, you have to pick a particular angle, whatever it is we're talking about. It may be to abuse someone physically, to do that sexually, arouse or whatever. But my own context is land, basically. And this is the law guiding, this is the law under which they act to, abuse their power. That's what I'm particular about this particular law. But do you get my point now?
I get your point. I got your point from the beginning, right? I'm just saying that the counter argument for it is that if you take away the powers, the land, if you enact or repeal or abolish the Land Use Act, then it means that government's hands are tied, because government can decide to come and do a road, and the owner of that land says, I don't want them to do a road here, and government cannot do that road. And we can't have that, right? We can't have people having the overriding power to impede development. So that is the whole essence of the Land Use Act. If it's being abused, that's unfortunate, and that's why we have the courts. If you feel like you're harmed lawfully, go to the courts of law and you seek redress. But I don't think we should abolish powers that allow public servants to render public goods to people just because few people can leverage those laws to abuse power. But if that's opposition paper, that's fine. I'm just making a counter argument for it, so that's something you consider when pushing the policy recommendation forward. All right?
Yes, thank you so much. I understand now, and it's way more clear than it was before. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we need to move. Well, Jennifer, let's hear you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you, Favor, for raising that point. I wanted to say something based off what Favor said earlier, which is that governors do not own land. They are just custodians of lands in Nigeria, right? And I don't think I need to further explain, because Emmanuel has done a fantastic job breaking down why certain things exist the way they do, and people or institutions that should be held accountable when certain things like abuse of power happens. So there's no point stressing it. What I wanted to ask, the reason why I raised my hand up, is how do we get the recording? Because I joined this really late and I need the recording so I could, be carried along.
Okay, I'm sure Favor and Tim will sort that out with you, Jennifer. All right. So let's move on to report. So reports, like I said, these are more detailed, right? So they are structured, evidence-driven documents that provide comprehensive accounts of a specific policy, issue, project, or event. So here you have to make your findings, your analysis. It serves as official reference for future decision making, right? Again, our reference, we spoke about the Rosario report on Wednesday. So that's the kind of report that when this administration came on board, they said, oh, we want to now see how we can implement this. It was done in 2012, but it was still relevant in 2024 because of the analytical rigor and the depth of the context that was in it, right? So unlike a position paper that takes a side, a report has to be neutral, right? You have to tell the truth, even if it's ugly, right? So if you look at the Rosario report like I did, it takes different agencies. There are some that recommends to be left. There are some that says should be merged. There are some that say should be stripped. So if you're doing a report, then you have to be neutral. You have to not show that you take a side so that anybody reading it can read it objectively, right? For the structure, again, this is more detailed. So you have your table of contents with this, the executive summary, the methodology, how you did your research, how you did your reporting, how you did your findings, your recommendations, your appendices, your bibliography, and the rest. It's almost like a project work, so to speak. It has to be quite detailed. And sometimes it takes years. It takes a lot of work, a lot of study to put together, right? And for the other policy documents we discuss, less is more. Less is more. But for the report, more is always more. Include all the charts, all the raw data, all the stakeholders you interviewed, everybody you spoke to. Take as much time as you need. Don't leave any stone unturned. Let it not be that, oh, you did your report and you did not speak to this person or this agency. Cover all your bases. Take as much time and make sure that the density and the depth is there for anyone to see, right? And like I mentioned with the Rosario report, even today, you want to use it, it's still relevant. There are some reports that were done in the 70s that are still relevant, right? There are some reports that were done and the government comes and uses it years later, months later. You can revise it with new information, but the report should be something that is relevant enough to be cited to be cited in future, right? So the fact that we are making our report dense doesn't mean that we still don't try to capture attention, right? So again, this is not a universal rule. It's something I just call the 333 rule, right? So you have 3 seconds to catch the eye with the title or the cover page of your report, right? So make it eye-catching, make it something that somebody wants to read. The fact that it is dense, it's very easy for someone to be discouraged and just put it aside. So you want to hook them ab initio, right? And then the next, you have about 30 seconds to catch the interest. I told you before that you have about 30 to 50 seconds to keep an attention span of a very important individual. So this is where, for those of us who stay to the end of the call on Wednesday, I showed some sample policy briefs, and you can see that there was a difference between the one from the women's led organization, where they had infographics and key stars, some things were put in quotes and all those things. These things catch your attention. If any of you is familiar with the NESG, one thing that they really stand out for when they do their reports is how they use their infographics and their key stars to really capture their attention, and also the quality of the work that they produce. So you can have good quality work, but it's not presented in a way that catches attention, then people are not encouraged to read further. And the next is 3 minutes to understand the message. Everything that is in your report should be in your executive summary, because studies have shown that 90% of people only read an executive summary and make a submission of the entire report, right? So it's going to be like a mini report. Your executive summary is not a teaser. It has everything that is in your report, just in a distilled way, right? So the problem, the method, the findings, your solution, assume that someone would only read your executive summary and write it in that context, right? If the reader only reads the summary, they should be able to take all the info and have enough to make a decision. They should only go further if they are trying to validate what the executive summary has said. Okay, let us see what he really did in this state. If you look at Budget Foundation State of State reports, they have a report that they publish every year that paints the fiscal picture of all Nigerian states. From the executive summary, you already know the states that did well, that did badly, the general health of the state, how IGR was rated in all the states. So all that is left for you, if someone like me now, I'll just be interested to, let me go and see how my state looked. And I'll go to table of contents and trace Akwa Ibom and go and look at it. Let me see how this state looks. They say my state did this way. Can I actually go and look at what they did, how they managed to place my state in this position? But the executive summary already tells me everything I need to know. So 333, again, it's not a hard and fast rule, but it's a way that I feel like if you adopt it, you make sure that you hook someone with your cover, you keep them with the infographics, especially around the first few pages, and then your executive summary is written in a way that it captures attention and delivers all the message, so that even if someone doesn't read further, they have the full context of what you're saying in your report. All right, and lastly, just to tie it, everything we've spoken about, whether it's a brief, a memo, position paper, or a report, first thing is you have to be objective, right? Even when advocating, don't hide data that contradicts you. Let's say, for example, Favor wanted to put a brief, a memo, or whatever document on this issue that we just discussed about. It won't be ideal or ethical for her to now maybe ignore the part on the benefits of the fact that governors have control over land, right? And just focus on the abuses. She can make a case for it that way, but because she's not bringing a balance to it, anyone that just finds that balance, easy for them to throw her issue out, right? Same thing with the issue that Jennifer mentioned. Yes, because again, remember when she started as if the orphanages were the problem because she was trying to really like reform them and all those things, right? But again, from our conversation, she now brought some more balance to it, like, okay, the orphanages are doing this, even if they are doing it for some ulterior motives, but mainly because there are literally no off-takers constitutionally, right, for this right now. So maybe if I strengthen this agency of government, then I can now take the orphanages to task. So they're actually doing a public service, because if they just send it to go out right now, nobody knows what will happen to them in their foster home. So don't hide data that contradicts you. Welcome it, investigate it, and if indeed your problem is the problem that I think it is, the data would not dissuade you from that. It's also possible, be honest to yourself enough that the fact that you're passionate about something, if the data says otherwise, then abandon it. I think it was on Wednesday that someone used the analogy of accident, for example. If you feel like this road, because of the culverts or because of the potholes, or because of the position of the speed bumps, is leading to an uprising accident, and actually place a camera there and do a time span analysis, and you actually see that that particular week was a one-off, and it was not the case, admitted, okay, this is not a problem. Maybe what happened that day was just a one-off because I've been here every day for 180 days, for 200 days, and I've seen maybe an average of one accident every other week. So it's not a death trap that I thought it was. And then you abandon it and look for another policy issue, right? Don't go out of your way to justify a matter just because you feel it's a problem. Like I said, public policy, emphasis on the public. It could be a you problem, it could be a your area problem, it could be a your estate problem. Solve it on that level. If you're bringing to the area of public policy, it has to be a problem that has far-reaching policy implications. Because if a law, a bill, a policy is passed on a whole country, it should not be based on the experience that I have in Lokogoma, in Abuja. Next thing is your credibility, right? Your sources. Your sources, if you're doing a study and nobody knows where your fact is, like 6 out of 10 people in this city are unemployed, says who, right? Who validates that study? You can't be the only one. If you're the only one who has done a study, there's no literature review about it, look for the closest related literature review, right? So if you're doing a study on maternal mortality in an area and there's no data for it, right? All right, check the population data on births and deaths. If it shows that a disproportionate number of women die in that community, that can be a place for you to now say, my argument is that most of these women that died in this community, which the studies already show from this credible source, died in childbirth, and they cannot investigate it. So while it's not a core maternal mortality figure, you have another population relevant figure that you can tie to it. Don't be the alpha and the omega of issues of policy. Have sources, have credible sources that you can quote to substantiate the data that is backing your advocacy, right? And then another thing I say, especially for briefs and memos, I call it the read aloud test. You write something because most of us are driven by passion, by a problem we've seen. When we're writing, the thing just pours out, right? And sometimes we end up making our sentences more complicated than they should be. For someone who is reading it, who is not as passionate or even as interested as you don't want to turn them off with bogus state sentence. So I call it the read aloud test. If you're reading a document and you run out of breath while reading a sentence, that sentence is too long. If you're saying, my name is Emmanuel, I come from Kwara State, that sentence is too long. Look for where you put a comma, look for where you break it, look for where you simplify it, look for what you pick and highlight it as a text note, look for what you put in a text bar, just so that person reading it doesn't get turned off by your lexis, your structure, or the format, and now miss out the meat of your matter, which is more important, which is the policy, right? Last thing I would say is, in every room where decisions are made, there's a document, good or bad, right? So don't underestimate the place of your document. Just make sure your document is right, it's in the right hands, and it's being seen by the right people. Thank you very much for your attention. If there are any questions, I will take them now.
If we have questions, kindly just signify. Thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel, for that insightful class. Okay, we have ends up already. It was really, really impressive. Testimony, I saw your hands first. Please unmute and speak. We can hear you clearly. We would hear you rather. Please, you can unmute and speak. Testimony, we are all ears.
Good evening. Can you hear me clearly now, please? Could you hear me now, please?
Yes. Well, okay. Just carry on.
Okay. Once again, Mr. Effiong, thanks so much for the detailed breakdown you gave onto us. I came a bit late, but I get a lot of things from it. So I have 2 questions, and I'll appreciate on it. The first question I have is about the use of primary data. Now, I'm not exactly sure this was talked about, but in trying to talk about your maybe policy paper, how relevant is primary data? Are there things to note why using primary data? That means data you get from yourself for your policy paper. This is the first one. For the second one, I would like to know, how do you get a policy report out to a wide range of people when it's not sponsored by maybe an institute or organization? If it's like a personal store, how do you get to make it reach a larger group of people? Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Testimony. So for primary data, I think Gideon asked a related question on Wednesday. If it's data that you're sourcing from the population, right? You're putting out questionnaires, you're meeting people, you're asking questions, then you have to follow all the ethical data collection procedures, right? Get consent letters from them, get approval, where you're doing an FGD or whatever it is, right? And go and get your data. If it is things like the analogy I made on Wednesday, say someone feels that a road construction was not done properly, and that has led to accidents in a particular road, and there's no data to substantiate that, right? You could get permission from necessary road maintenance authorities, set up a camera. Oh, this is what I want to do. I want to set up a camera here that will run for the next 1 month, 2 months, right? And get their data on how many road accidents happen here. You get their say so, their sign off, and then you do that. But ensure that you follow the ethical principles, right? And then get out your data, because again, data paucity is a reality of doing policy work in Nigeria. We can't deny that. What I'll now say secondly to that is, like the last point I just made, either find a secondary data that either substantiates that, or if it doesn't exist, something close enough to, right? You don't want to build your entire policy case on a problem that only you found, only you gathered data, only you authenticated it, right? So if you're getting qualitative data, that even helps you, because then you get feedback from people, and then you can actually say that from engagement with the population, this sample size, this is actually a problem they have. With quantitative data, it's a bit more tricky, right? So find somebody else has done a similar study, a related study, to back up your data so that your sources are firm. Because like I said, public policy matters are matters that will lead to policy change, laws, bills, or regulations. So you want to be something that is far-reaching, that is verified and justifiable before you push for it. The second question was on how to push your work out, right? And I think if it's not being covered, I think it's something that has to be covered, and part of this training is in actually you've done your work, how to push it out, right? So we have coalition forming. There are some things that you just have to form a critical mass of people to push your issue with you, right? Because you might just be a lone wolf, right? Social media has helped, right? So if you get the right people to get the right thing trending, that could also help. Favor talks about op-eds, right? You can publish op-eds in leading newspapers and leading magazines. Then you also leverage organizations, right? Like YALI Network, for example, institutions that are known and credible, right? And sell it to them, get them to adopt it, get them to see the reason, and then you guys push it to the right channels together. Typical example I'll give you is Not Too Young to Run, right? So we know that YAGA has done some good work on their own, Plaque has, and other civil society organizations. But when they came together under that coalition, I think that also helped them move the needle together, because there are more credible people, more known people, more hands, and they pushed it, and it was eventually signed. So I think once you identify your issue, I think it's part of the conversation I had on Wednesday with Adepoju. Don't just be a lone ranger, right? If it's something that you actually want to have traction, get people's buy-in, get coalitions, get credible organizations to back you up that would not mutilate your message or dilute your message, and then push it out. If it's a position paper that you just want people to be aware of to create awareness, you have social media, you have print media, get some columns, do an op-ed. There are some journalists that if your op-ed is good enough, they might even host it on their columns without pay, right? If it's something that aligns with them, right? So just find all these media to push your work out. But I'll always lean towards coalition, because it gives you credibility that this thing I saw, the other people that have seen that it's a problem and are joining me to push for it. Organizations like YALI, Abuja Shapers, all these other groups, they're very helpful when it comes to things like that. I hope that helped, Testimony.
Thanks so much.
All right. Any other questions?
Yes, we have Jennifer. Jennifer, we can hear me. Please unmute and speak.
Okay, thank you very much for the audience. Thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel, Effiong, and everybody who has stayed on this call to this time. First of all, I have one question, but I want to just comment on the power of coalition that you just mentioned. I want to give a short story. Last year, or from last year, I had a lot of cases of sexual violence against persons, and I was trying to prosecute. I was trying to get justice for these young ladies and boys, and then it was very draining. Guess what? Just on Monday, I got another case in Benue State, and of course, I sent my team. But what did I do? I worked smart. I had to go back to my Bengone group, and I said them, look, gender units, you need to work with me. And you know what? Today, 2 lawyers, powerful voices in Benue, came to the police station, pushed this thing. Before now, I would spend so much on rape kit tests and everything. But this time, they are the ones like saying, no, we need to even make contribution. What if we need to do this? We need to do that. Today is Friday. A case that we received on Monday. Today is Friday. This case is already in the state CID. This case has already been sent to court. This is a process that took me months, 6 months, until the case gets stalled and everything. So I cannot overemphasize the power of coalition, the power of partnership. And thank you very much for saying that. It made me really excited. And, so my question is, I have a few policies that I'm pushing for domestication. Some already exist. I'm just trying to see how we can domesticate these policies. And of course, they have been implemented. So the problem is the domestication. I don't know if you would be willing to give us like guidance or mentorship after this meeting, and of course for the policy I mentioned earlier, if it's possible for you to guide me more, because of course as a mother, I'm always very heartbroken when I see some of these kids in very bad situation. And you were right, if you remove them from the orphanage, where are you taking them to? So I really need guidance on how to go about this, because it's really, really, if it's just that thing I would do, then at least I know I've done something. So thank you so much.
No problem, Jennifer. Happy to help. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and then we can take the conversation from here. Just same name, Emmanuel Effiong, and just shoot me a message, and then we'll talk further. But when you say us, who is us here? You run an NGO or organization?
Yes, I have an organization, the Julie Brahma Women and Children Initiative, JUACI. Our website is www.juaci.org, JUWACI. And our organization has a vision to empower households. We want to see every household economically stable, healthy, and at peace. So one of our major projects has been a project to end gender-based violence. December last year, I actually launched a whole book about gender-based violence and what happens to people. Some people I don't want to waste our time or anything. If you can see my website, jenniferali.com, you'll be able to see much of the work I've done and all that. So yes, I have an organization, and this is just one project of my organization. So that's the we.
Well done. You're doing good work. Well done. So let's connect and talk more.
It will be my pleasure. Thank you so much, sir.
All right. Yes, Favor.
Yeah, actually, it's just to build on what Jennifer said about domesticating policies or laws that are already in place. I would love to learn more about that, because I've seen so much when it comes to VAPP, when it comes to GBV, it's so much other in Nigeria. But these states are just against these policies or these laws. So I will know how to domesticate them better. If you can answer the question briefly now, or they'll be sitting for it, I would like to know. Thank you.
All right. Yes. Interestingly, the firm I work with, we're part of the organizations that help develop the Women Economic Empowerment Policy, WE policy, and we also led the domestication in Lagos, Kaduna, and those were the first 2 states I think that picked it up, and we're hoping to expand it. And one thing that experience taught me is that Nigeria is 36 different entities in one when it comes to matters of policy, right? The fact that something is articulated at the federal doesn't mean that a subnational has the manpower, the capacity, the religious and cultural latitude to implement it. And these are factors that you have to consider when domesticating a policy, right? You have to understand that when it comes to something like family planning, for example, in the southern part of Nigeria, you can make that an economic case. You can tell somebody you need to have the number of children that can give them good education, you can train them, and you can sell that to somebody. In the northern part of Nigeria, for the most part, you have to make it a cultural case, right? A religious case, because the economic rhetoric might not necessarily fly as much. But it's the same policy you're trying to domesticate, right? I also have to understand the capacity, the wherewithal, the latitude, and the political will. The political will. So when domesticating a policy, the first thing I would say is have a champion in that state or local government who is influential and who would be your voice. A local. Mistake most of us make, or some of us make, is because we are passionate, we want to be the face behind it. It's more important that the policy flies than it was sponsored by Emmanuel or Joachim, for example. It's more important the policy flies than who makes it fly. So when you go to the States, I say identify a champion, a commissioner, a director, someone of influence, first lady. Most of the states that domesticate the we policy, the first ladies are the ones that champion the tribe. Have that champion. That does have a work for you. When you get to stakeholder resistance and all those things, that person is the front. So they're not arguing or pushing against an outsider. It's one of them who is respected, who has a voice that they're talking to. Second advantage that gives you is that that person helps you to understand the nuances of that community, of that society. So you can now amend and articulate that policy to align with the existing dynamics in that place. Very important, because I mean that's the whole idea of domestication. You're bringing a policy and making it home. So who best to help you understand it than someone who lives and breathes there, right? The last thing is consider the political economy. There are policies that you would push last year and it will be resisted. You take it this year for a governor that is waiting for re-election, he will accept it if it can be made to see that it's a political benefit to him. So the fact that a policy should be domesticated doesn't mean it can be domesticated anytime. So read the room, so to speak. Gauge the template. A community that is just having a crisis, for example, they came and they kidnapped people, they shut up their community. That's not the right time to go to a ballet or a traditional ruler and try to be telling him that, oh, sir, do this law to punish. You have to read the room. Say, okay, this is not the time for it. Sometimes play the long game. Just touch it lightly until the appetite is suitable enough. And then last thing I would say is, if it's a policy that is replacing a tradition, find a viable alternative. I don't know how many of us saw this move that this our chess guy did in, I think, a community in Northern Cross River, where people were giving out their daughters, like you borrow money from somebody and then you don't have money to pay, you're giving out your child as payment, right? It was a practice there where ladies and young girls were being given up as payment for their fathers, and it was like a practice there. And he saw it, and obviously he wanted to abolish something like that, but he was able to do painstaking engagement and all, and then found a way, because these men are not the most economically viable people. They'll still borrow things and they'll still go into debt. So if they're not going to pay by giving their daughters in marriage, how else can they pay? I think there was a credit, something that he came up with around it that now worked for them, so that they were not just abolishing this and having that lacuna. Nature abhors a vacuum, right? So just to recap, identify a champion, help that champion reshape the policy to fit the nuances of that society, read the room and understand the political economy of the timing, and then for a policy that is replacing existing practice or introducing something that has not been there before, find a viable alternative that fits the community. I think if you apply this with consistent engagement, you can be able to make a move on your domestication. I hope that helped people. And then
Yeah, it does answer my question. Please, can you hear me clearly?
yes, I can hear you.
Okay, very well. Thank you. So that was really insightful. Thank you so much. It did everything. Like the part where you said, you find a champion, I guess that is like the best way forward, because people have different ideas and ways of doing things. But when you go to the local, they already know the dynamics of society, and they can help to better push your policy out there. Donald, you're unmuted. Do you want to say something? Donald Joy can buy. Do you want to say something? A question or a contribution or a feedback? Okay, I guess that was a mistake then. So thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel, once again. Please, do you have any more questions, contributions, feedback? Just feel free to either unmute, it raise up your hand first, then you unmute, or you use the chat box to express your thoughts. We are all ears. Okay, I guess no one has any more questions. The class was really insightful and very explanatory. And okay, so in the chat board, we have some comments. Everyone is saying thank you, Mr. Emmanuel. Good insight. Thanks for the smooth lecture. Oh yeah, I very well much aligned with this. It was really a smooth lecture and was really, really insightful. So now we are close to the end of today's session. But before then, just like we did on Wednesday, I would love to get our feedback onto this class. What do you think about this class? Was it interesting? Is it nice? What is your key takeaway from this class for today? Would love to hear from people who are on the call. I don't want to call anybody, but let me just give it a try a bit. So I'll be waiting on us to raise our hands and speak before I call anybody randomly. Okay, Jennifer, you have the floor. Please unmute and speak.
Chief Jennifer, actually. I have a chief
Oh,
taxi
my
title.
apologies.
Yes,
My
respectfully.
apologies for
Yes,
that. I'm so
please.
sorry. I thought
Of
that
course,
was
I'm okay with that. I'm
yes.
just, yeah. Oh, well.
Very well. Thank
I
you.
wanted to just not speak again. Like, I feel like I've spoken so much in this very class, but
No, please, you have
instead
your
of keeping quiet and then going to his inbox to say thank you and all that, of course I've been given the opportunity. So please, Mr. Emmanuel, take your giant flowers. Like, the bouquet is so big, I'm holding it in front of me and my face is not visible before you because it's that big. I really learned so much, and actually it's not just the things that I learned, it's the inspiration that I got to move on with the plans that I've had to move on, especially when it comes to policies, implementation, domestications, and, policy formation. So it was so educational, so insightful, so interesting, actually. And, very interactive also. So thank you. And I cannot thank you enough. These flowers are heavy. Take them already, please.
Okay, I guess I have seen the flowers and it's taking them already because it's giving his thumbs up. So I guess yes, not taking the flowers already. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for giving us your beautiful flowers. So do we have any more? Will everyone want to speak, or should I talk to this class? What did you learn differently? What are you taking from this class? And are you inspired to even want to do more? Okay, someone else on quiet. Gideon, are you on the call? Can you share your thoughts? You were kind of calm today. Gideon, are you on the call? Would love to hear from you. How was this class? Did you enjoy it? Did you have a great time? And what are you learning differently? What are you taking from this class, basically? Okay, so I guess Gideon is not on the call. Um, okay, Joy Anthony, you've been giving us your thumbs up since. Can you unmute and just share a few thoughts before we round up for today?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much. Glad to was
Joy, you are unmuted, but we can barely hear anything. No sound is from the side. Can you just
Yeah,
mute and unmute again and try to speak? Let's see if it's a mic issue or network issue. Okay, Joy, we barely heard anything. Your mic was unmuted, but we didn't hear any sound from your end. But right about now, we are running up to today's session. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining and even for staying till this time. We appreciate your time, your participation, dedication, and commitment, of course, to make sure this class is really insightful. And we don't take your time for granted. We all know time is money, and you've been here for almost 2 hours. It's a lot of money. Let's say be in millions. Basically, thank you so much, everyone. And Mr. Emmanuel, we really appreciate your time. I would love to give you a flower, but that will be in person. This session was really, really insightful. It was really impressive. I had a lot to learn for today's class, and we would love to have you more and more. And yes, everyone, thank you so much. And I am Favor Adeboye. It's nice to have you all once again, and look forward to seeing you next week when I stay. Bye for now.
Here we stand as a people with one song, with one voice. We're a nation undivided and poised. We will take a stand and build our land in faith to defend what is ours. Here we are as a people with one heart for one cause. We're determined to rebuild and restore. Where freedom reigns and truth prevails. Our land where there's hope for us all. Our land where there's hope for us all. We'll defend our land. We believe in this nation, and we know we'll get there. We'll defend our land. We believe in Nigeria and the promise she holds, and that one day we'll shine like the sun. We're a great nation. Though we